Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, we've got a lot of different moves being made in the NBA right now. Seeing a lot of two-way contracts, a lot of guys getting waived, guys getting signed. Part of that has to do with the timing right now in terms of where we're at in the NBA calendar, but a lot of stuff going on transactionally, maybe more than you would typically think of for this time of year.
Yeah, I think them changing the two-way rules where it used to be mid-January was your end of being able to sign players. That's changed things quite a bit. And of course, we've got as we record this on the 28th of short February, we've got one more day left in buyout season. So what
Mhm.
just there's a lot of confusion about this. I've seen all over Twitter and a bunch of other places. So just to explain it to everybody here, what happens is you have until March 1st to waive a player for the player to be still playoff eligible. Now, 10-day contracts don't count in that. That's a whole different thing than other stuff. Those contracts you don't actually waive, they just end. So those guys are eligible all the way through. But if you're on a standard contract, you have till tomorrow, March 1st, to get waived and still be playoff eligible. But you can sign players all the way till the end of the regular season.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was the Cavs did it 2 years in a row. On the last day of the regular season, they signed Dante Jones for playoff runs and I guess locker room stuff. And hey, he helped them to one title and to getting to the finals. So I guess it worked. So
Yeah.
good on them. But yeah, so we see this Greg Monroe signed very late last year in the season for Philadelphia and then started in a playoff game. So, we're in a point where I just think people get a little confused on those rules, but that's how it works.
Yeah, I've seen that a bit as well, where people are confused in terms of people are thinking they have to be signed to a new team
Correct.
before March 1st,
Yep.
which is not the case.
Nope.
Um, we've got plenty to get into today, so let's jump right into it. Let's start obviously with the big story. LeBron foot injury. We saw him suffer it against the Dallas Mavericks. I've been talking about it for basically the last 24 hours straight. But LeBron foot injury against the Mavs. He said, "I heard a pop." Now we're hearing that he's going to be out for at least a couple of weeks. Then the Lakers will reassess from there. Maybe waiting to kind of see what happens if the wheels fall off over the next 2 weeks without LeBron. Does he come back this season? That type of thing might be kind of up in the air at this point, and we'll see. Now the Lakers have to try to figure out a way to get through without LeBron, without D'Angelo Russell. We believe at least for tonight. We'll see about tomorrow against the Thunder. But man, Keith, this they literally got one game and change of a healthy team and have not been healthy the entire rest of the season. It has been brutal on the injury front. That injury bug will just not leave this team alone.
Yeah, I think couple things here. I've seen some folks say this is why they shouldn't have made the trades. Well, in some ways, you could say this is exactly why you did make those trades,
Mhm.
right? So, because if on the pre trade deadline roster, LeBron goes down, that's it. It's over. Just I know you owe the swap rights with the Pelicans, but just punt the season, sit AD. You're not making anything with that
Right.
old roster the way it was. It just wasn't going to happen. Now you still have a chance to stay competitive. You hope Anthony Davis can be the Anthony Davis that started this season. You're hoping D'Angelo Russell obviously is, like you said, dealing with an ankle sprain right now, but hopefully you get him back. You ask a little bit more of a couple other guys, and you just kind of hope you can keep things moving. The I know you're well aware of this, but just in case people aren't quite following the Lakers quite as closely, 3-game win streak for them.
Mhm.
They've closed within a half game of 10th with the Pelicans loss last night to the Orlando Magic. And they're only, I believe let me make sure I get that right, 2.5 out of the 6 seed. Now, again, as we've talked about many times, you've got 5-6 teams to climb just to get there. But it's one of those things where it was finally coming together with a roster that made sense. We were high on their deadline moves. And now it's just kind of looking at it of like, all right, I don't know. I
Yeah.
still think they're probably okay to maybe get into the plan. I think OKC has really turned a corner of all right, we fun season we had, but we're done. SGA is not fully healthy. We're gonna let him sit. I thought Utah was headed that direction, but they just keep kind of winning games here and
It
there.
helps when you play the Spurs, it seems like
This
every
is true.
single night.
Yes, yes, that is definitely true. But Portland's super inconsistent. The Pelicans have just been an absolute mess
Yeah.
for the last month and a half. So I don't know that anything really changes. You kind of hope your best here, and you hope you can kind of hang in there. And maybe this is only 2 or 3 weeks for LeBron, and then he comes back with 2 or 3 weeks to play. That's the other challenge, right? There's only 6 weeks left in the
Yeah.
season altogether, which I don't know that people have fully reconciled with. I think we get all screwed up with the All-Star break.
Because
Then
people mark that as the halfway point.
yes, and
That's the problem.
you come back and the All-Star break ends, and then there's like a week of February left because it's a short month, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we're in March, and now with the play-in tournament and everything, season ends basically. I think this year it's April 9th is the last day of the season. So yeah, we're getting down to it here. So I don't know. I'm not going to write the Lakers off by any means, but things are going to be a lot more difficult than they would have been otherwise. And obviously, you don't rush LeBron back. This isn't like you're competing for the 1 seed or anything.
Right.
So, you let him get healthy at this point and go. Last thing I'll say on this, because I want to say a couple things. This is just to me further proof LeBron is no longer the unbreakable robot that he once was.
Sure.
Injuries get him now, right? I mean, year 20 in the league, he's closer in age to you and I than he is to a lot of players in the league. It happens, I guess. Father time does come for all of us. When he's healthy, he's great still, but he's gonna miss time. I think now, if you're the Lakers, this is again why you made this kind of move, because for next year, maybe the year after, you have depth now, because I think we're in the phase. LeBron's probably going to miss 20, 25 games every season. And that's just going to be how it is, for however much longer he plays. I don't think we're going to see any more 70, 75, never mind 82 game seasons out of LeBron. I just don't, it's just, he's just too old. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, it does. It gets all of us. It's just the way that it goes.
Yep.
Trust me, I can feel it when I try to get up out of bed in the morning. I look at what LeBron's doing and I go, oh my God, how is he doing that at 38 years old? But in any event, I've talked about this a ton over on Lakers Nation. So most of my thoughts are kind of out there, but I'll sum it up just by saying this. This is when people look at the offseason moves, this was about, or the trade deadline moves, this was about not just this season, but next season. And that was one of, I thought, the prerequisites to making that kind of a move where you're going to give up future draft capital, is it had to be something that helped you beyond just this year. And they were smart to do it that way. And then I think that effectively what this does is it shifts you back into being a very low margin for error team. There was a stretch there where the Lakers looked like, now that they had the right fitting pieces and they had LeBron, they had AD and all that, like, you got bad games out of LeBron and AD against the Warriors and you still won because you had other guys. Whereas prior to the trade deadline, well, you have no shot to win that game if you get a bad game out of LeBron and AD. Now, no LeBron, I think it shifts you back into being this team where, well, if you shoot 20% from three, you're losing the game. If you give up a bunch of offensive boards, well, you can't withstand that and win a game. You just become more of a low margin for error team again, and then that just makes it makes each possession that much more important for this team moving forward, because one or two slip ups here could be the difference between a win or a loss. Again, you don't have that margin for error anymore. But it'll be interesting to see how it all goes. They need AD to be an MVP caliber player. We'll find out if he can do that.
And you then need AD to have enough left for the play-in tournament, playoffs, wherever they land ultimately seeding wise. And that becomes your additional worry, right? For months we talked about you need LeBron to have enough left in the tank. Well, now AD's back and LeBron's the one that's out. So it's just, like you said, no margin for error left for this team. That was just, for me, that was the 2-minute reports.
Okay. I saw NBA communications and was like, what happened? Okay, it's just the last.
That one gets me every day at around 5 o'clock.
It's that notification goes off and you're like, oh, okay.
That one and the screen time one on Sunday mornings. I need to shut that screen time off, because honestly, I don't need reminded that I spend way too much time on my phone.
It just makes me feel bad every time.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing good that comes out of that.
No. It's the same reason why I've turned off all my notifications for any of my stock portfolios.
Yeah, mine is also I get those notifications from the Dunkin' Donuts app. It uses the same sound as the Twitter notification, and that happened during trade deadline. I was like, yeah, cool, iced coffee's on sale Mondays, great. It's the trade deadline. I don't need it right now. I needed the iced coffee, just didn't need the notification.
Yeah, that's right. It was saying, hey, it's the trade deadline. You need a little boost to get through. You just don't need it to be notified that way, to where your heart stops and,
Exactly.
Oh no. The Wolves have been struggling of late, dealing with life without Karl Anthony Towns. That they didn't look. The whole Gobert experiment has not been good. You look at what Walker Kessler is doing in Utah. That doesn't help the optics of that massive Gobert trade either. But according to John Krasinski, not the guy from The Office, the Wolves will not trade Karl Anthony Towns. They still believe in what they've got, think that they can make some noise once they get everybody healthy and back in play. Obviously, they've got Mike Conley in the mix now, no longer D'Angelo Russell, but are not considering trading Karl Anthony Towns. But maybe that stance changes at some point. I know teams are kind of going to keep tabs on that to see what happens here. But for now, it doesn't seem like the Wolves are ready to blow this thing up this summer,
Yeah.
obviously.
That's it. And this came out of Zach Lowe's podcast over on ESPN, where he said it feels like the inevitable end game is at least something that is talked about with Karl Anthony Towns being traded. And then Krasinski said teams are already talking about it. I'm definitely eyeing the situation, looking to see if Cat will become available. I can tell you from everyone I've talked to within the organization, they believe in him. They believe in Anthony Edwards, Gobert, and Cat can work together. Chris Finch believes it. Tim Connolly believes it. But then he says, if he added at the end, which is this is kind of the key quote here for me is, but if the bottom falls out of this thing and they go forward that way, there are going to be teams knocking on the door. I do think that overall, especially locally here, there's a lack of appreciation among fans for what Karl Anthony Towns is as a player. And that's interesting to me. That says sometimes if you're a franchise, you feel like you can't make a move like that because the fans are going to be like, you traded our best guy. But if the fans are like, he's only kind of okay. And I've gotten the sense talking to folks around Minnesota and people who cover that team, like that's Anthony Edwards' team now, right? Like they've all kind of shifted over to that. And they had started to play kind of well over the last month or so. They'd figured some stuff out. But, it just, I continue to believe that if this doesn't get to where the Wolves want it to be, the way to recoup the mess from the Gobert trade is a Cat trade, right? You move in and trade him, you get everything you can get back for him, and then you kind of reset and retool everything around Anthony Edwards moving forward.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see if that's the path they ultimately go down here. Why is Cat not appreciated in Minnesota?
I don't know. It's weird, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I wonder if he's not KG, right? And like they've never really won at a high rate with him, and I mean, everything has that period of time where it's like, I mean, what I don't know off the top of my head. What year do you think he's in right now? If you had to guess,
it would have been close. 7.
Yeah, this is year 8 for him.
8.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so I mean, 8 years of what 2 playoff appearances and a bunch of really crappy teams beyond that. I maybe can see why people might be like, and he's a great player, but I don't know that he's a fun player, right? Like, there's no real Karl Anthony Towns like super highlights and those kind of things, and whereas you get that with Anthony Edwards, so I could see why people might be more. I mean, if it was me, I'd appreciate having both of them, and hope you can figure out a way to make it work and move it forward. So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting too. Coming out of the draft, he was known as this next level defender.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing with him, and it's been the opposite. He's been much more of an offensive player. Almost
why they traded for Rudy Gobert and gave
right exactly
they could to cover for him. Yeah, that is definitely true. Yeah.
Right there with Andrew Bogut as a big who came into the NBA, known as this incredible offensive talent, and then was known as a defender for the majority of his career, not so much an offensive
very
player.
Underrated passer for Bogut.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into a few of the transactions going on around the league right now because we've got a lot of things happening. We're going to start with the Kings. They waive KZ Okpala and they sign PJ Dozier. A lot of stuff like this going on where you've got these kind of somewhat minor moves that are taking place. And again, like we said, a part of that is just the NBA calendar. But what do you think the Kings are looking at here?
One more ball handler, one more guy with a little bit more upside. I think they hoped with signing Okpala that was going to be one of those like, hey, we got a guy on a minimum. He comes in, he fills a real role for us. Never was able to really crack that rotation fully. Once Keegan Murray solidified himself as someone who could handle 30 minutes a night, that was it for Okpala. He was out of the rotation. So get PJ Dozier in, guys 6'5", 6'6", can handle the ball, play really 1 through 3 in a lot of different configurations, can play with Davion Mitchell and Malik Monk in lineups together off the bench. So I get it for the Kings right now. You're trying to position to, we're gonna have the strongest roster we can for the trade deadline, the playoff push, rather, which is not a place they've been in a decade or almost 2 decades. So now here we are, and I like this move by the Kings.
Yeah, yeah, solid. I mean, look, the Kings are right there. They're, I mean, knocking on the door potentially of the 2 seed. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something that they could
Crazy.
they could get to. I mean, they're a game and a half back of it. Like
Yep.
the Kings are having
They're
a heck of a
closer
season.
to the 2 seed than they are to the play-in tournament
Yeah.
by a good amount too, by a
Mm-hmm.
couple games. So yeah, great stuff for them.
Pretty good. Keith, somebody hit me with this the other day that the 13th seed in the West is closer to the 1 seed than to the 14 seed.
Wow.
If you
Yeah,
look at
that's crazy.
the Thunder at 13 are 14 games back, and the San Antonio Spurs at 14 in the West are 28 and a half games back.
Do you want to know what gets me?
That's nuts.
Because
Huh.
it's related to that. The Spurs have lost 16 straight games, and they still don't have the NBA's worst record because that's how bad the Rockets have been.
Yep.
That's just, to me, that's like mind-boggling. And not that the Rockets have been good; they've lost 9 in a row. So it's yeah, we're up to what, after yesterday's results, we're up to the Pistons, Spurs, and Rockets have combined to lose 30 consecutive games between the
Tank
three of
mode
them. So
engaged.
there it is. Yeah, there's your top three, 14% odds at Victor Wembanyama for sure.
Wow. Ish Wainwright signs on with the Phoenix Suns. Suns adding some more depth here. Thoughts on this one? Is it? I've always kind of liked Ish Wainwright, and he spent time with Phoenix already. So what are we thinking here on this one?
Yeah, this is a good two-way conversion. This guy really earned his spot on two ways the last couple years. The Suns are going to bring him in. They added a second year onto that as a team option, so they'll have him for next season if they want him as well. He's another guy. What you're looking for now, you've got plenty of offense. You've got Durant and Booker, KD going to play tomorrow night as we record this, March 1st. He's going to make his debut. No longer speculation. The Suns, rare, but they tweeted it themselves. And like, Kevin Durant's expected to play tomorrow, which is, obviously they're excited as they should be. But you've got the offense. So what you're looking for is guys who can defend multiple positions, because you're going to want to use Durant at the 3, at the 4, maybe some at the 5. So having a guy like Wainwright who can really handle guarding anybody 2 through 4, because he's not super tall, but he's very strong. He's pretty quick. He's got that big barrel chest that he can kind of lean
physical.
on the bigger guys. Yeah, very, very physical player. So I like this for the Suns. It's probably not going to change their fortunes any, but just gives them one more guy that they can throw into the mix late in games. It is a little interesting though. He got their last roster spot. They added Terrence Ross during the buyout season, but did not go for another guy. So that's, not to say they couldn't, right? I mean, they seem pretty all in. If somebody pops free here in the next day or so, they could, but I think they probably looked around and said, yeah, we like Ish Wainwright a lot better than anybody else we could add at the moment.
Speaking of people who they could add potentially, Will Barton has landed with the Raptors. Will Barton, he hasn't had a great season, but he's historically been pretty good. So the Raptors add another wing here. Obviously, things weren't working out for him in Washington. So, where does he fit in the rotation here? That already has Pascal Siakam, already has Scotty Barnes. You've already got Gary Trent Jr. Obviously, he can back up some of these wing positions, but does he get enough minutes? I mean, that's usually what guys who are on the buyout market are looking for. It's minutes, it's opportunity. Is that there for him in Toronto?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird in that sense. They've kind of got 6 starters there now after adding Jakob Pertl, because they've got Pertl, Siakam, Anunoby, Trent, Barnes, and then Fred VanVleet's missed the last couple games with an injury. But when you add him to the mix, there's kind of your 6 main guys. Then Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher always play off the bench. So you're going to add Will Barton. My guess is they're going to give him a little bit more of a ball handling role on that second unit. Probably he'll play most of his time with either Siakam or Barnes, and they'll run the offense. And they're just going to ask him, run the floor. Do what you did in Denver. Just get up and down the floor for us. Try to help us create some easy scoring opportunities because this team is a mess in the half court still. They really struggle to shoot. They struggle to create good looks. So it's fine. If I'm Will Barton, it just kind of says to me, probably didn't have a lot of other great options. It seems like Boston, Milwaukee, both sitting on open roster spots, weren't overly interested in bringing him in there where he probably could have maybe filled a role there. But I think they're probably looking more internally now, either G League conversion or a two-way conversion or a G League call up maybe for either one of those teams. We'll see what that looks like. So yeah, it's fine. I just, again, I don't expect this is going to really pay huge dividends. And just to close the book on it, they waived Juancho Hernan-Gomez to open up the roster spot for Barton, but gives them a real wing off the bench, which is something they didn't actually have. Most of their bench guys are bigs.
And Toronto currently sitting at the 9 seed. I mean, they're in that play-in mix right now. They're 7-3 in their last 10. I don't know that they're going to move out of that spot.
No.
I mean, certainly it's possible, but they're a game and a half behind Atlanta for the 8 seed. I think this is probably about where they're going to finish things up for the season, is right around this 9 seed.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta is so goofy. It wouldn't fully shock me if Toronto caught them, but yeah, and then they're probably going to be, while trying to chase down the Hawks, they're battling with the Wizards and the Bulls for that final couple play-in spots. So we'll see what happens ultimately there.
Bryce McGowan, a couple other smaller ones. Bryce McGowan's to the Hornets, Jordan Goodwin to the Wizards.
Yep. Two-way conversions. Jordan Goodwin, start with that one. He played really well for Washington when they had no point guards. When both Monte Morris and DeLon Wright were out, Jordan Goodwin came in, played really, really well. His challenge is he doesn't always shoot it great. His shot has kind of abandoned him recently, but they gave him a bump in pay using what they had left of their non-taxpayer mid-level to give him a couple extra years on his contract and bringing him in here. This is great. Like, this is what you want to see with the two-way players, that they kind of graduate to the regular roster. And if you're Washington, you get that extra, you give them the bump, because that's how you get the extra years on the deal. Same with McGowan's. McGowan's got a really healthy bump in first year salary, got a fully guaranteed second year, which that says to me Charlotte is now going to operate as an over the cap team next summer, because otherwise, if you were looking to clear all the space you could, you wouldn't have given him a guaranteed second season. Right. And they did. It's not a huge guarantee. It's only 1.7 million, but that's 1.7 million you wouldn't want on the books if you were clearing the deck. And this says to me, PJ Washington and Miles Bridges probably going to be back in the fold in Charlotte in some form or fashion. The Hornets still sitting on an open standard roster spot, which my expectation is I would not be surprised if here before the season is out, they re-sign Miles Bridges and take care of that problem, not have to deal with it in the summer. And then you just kind of move into whatever the punishment phase is from the NBA, maybe sooner rather than later, start figuring that out. They may also already know maybe the NBA is going to hand down a 15-game suspension, and maybe they sign him with 15 games to go or something like that. I'm not reporting that. I'm just kind of guessing that could potentially be a thing, or it could drag into the summer and they figure it out then. But it is a little curious that this team that is quite oddly, they're winning games right now, even though they're terrible. But you should be filling out your roster spots to start that churn at the bottom. And last thing with the Hornets, because I don't think we put it on the show notes unless, you did. You're all over it. LaMelo Ball, fractured right ankle, going to miss the rest of the season. And that's, not that they were playing for anything, but that's, officially the death blow for this team. You're done.
Yeah. They'll be full tank mode here for the rest of the way. I don't think they'll catch up to the Spurs or anything like that, but full tank mode here. I think that if you are the Hornets, and obviously not speaking to anything that Miles Bridges did or anything that was going on in his personal life or any of that kind of stuff, but just from the Hornets perspective, if you want him around for next season, you ideally would like to get as many of the suspension games, if not all of them, handled this season. If you can get him in, get that suspension lifted, or go through that suspension and then go from there, start fresh next season. I would think that's going to be that would be their preference, would be to try to get something like that to happen.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's go one thing on Miles Bridges too with this. Yes, we're speculating that he would be suspended, but so is everybody. And everything I've talked to, everyone's like, yeah, there'll be a suspension of some sort coming. What's important to note is he did not get off in his trial, right? Like he pleaded no contest to the
Mhm.
charges, which is in effect for the NBA. That is almost the same as a guilty plea. If he went through the entire process and was found not guilty, the NBA would not
He's
necessarily
destroyed.
have recourse to punish him. But he pleaded no contest, essentially to get it over and done with on his side, on the legal side. Now for the NBA, when he signs, and again, they will not suspend him until he is an active player on a roster. There's no reason to suspend him now because he's not on a roster. So
Yeah.
that's where it works. He will be a restricted free agent again, or at least can be. The Hornets can make him one with that. And then to close on a more positive note, Bryce McGowan's fun player. If you haven't checked him out with the Hornets yet, he's got good size, pretty good ball handler, super athletic, likes to get to the basket, likes to attack the rim a little bit. Reminds me a little bit of the Martin twins, who have both turned into
Mhm.
really good players, and Charlotte had a huge hand in developing both of them into pretty good NBA players. He's not quite as big as those two. He's much more of a 2-3 than a 3-4, but he's a fun player and can do some stuff. So happy to see him get this opportunity.
Yeah, this is a chance for him, and that's what you see sometimes late in the season. Once a team knows they're out of things, you'll see guys get opportunities that they might not get otherwise, and some guys are able to really take advantage of it. We'll see if McGowan's will be one such player. Let's jump over to Detroit. Nerlens Noel waived. He'll be out there on the market. Where does he ultimately land? Like he's going to land somewhere, I would imagine. But he
Sure.
wasn't a big part of the rotation in Detroit. They brought in James Wiseman, who, by the way, dropped like 23 points last
Playing
night.
pretty
Like
well. Yeah.
where did that come from? But
James Wiseman
anywho,
and Marvin Bagley both
yeah,
playing well for Detroit. I guess that's just what the Pistons are going to do. They're going to take former number two picked big men and just rehab them and develop them into competent players. Which, hey, if you can, great. I'm all
yeah,
for it.
why not? Why
Yeah.
not? And they do part ways with Nerlens Noel. Where does he wind up? Where does he like? Who needs a rim protecting backup big right now?
That's your challenge, right? That's kind of a very specific skill set. I
Yeah.
Part of me says he could maybe fit in Dallas, like if they wanted to go that route. Kind of oddly enough, the Warriors maybe ish if they wanted to do that. I don't think he passes and screens well enough to fit in the way they want to play offense. So yeah, it's just really kind of odd. It's hard to easily pick out a place where it's like, yeah, there it is. There's the team who can use him. Like you said, my guess is he will land somewhere. He'll surface. This might be one too where this might be a couple weeks. See if some big man gets injured on a playoff contender, and then all right, hey, I'm here. And the team signs him that way. That could be how that one goes out.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned the Mavs. They're going to get Maxi Kleba back, which is big.
Yep.
Their interior
Huge.
defense has not been good, and he does give them a little bit of that there. Plus the 3-point shooting.
Mm-hmm.
They've been missing him for sure. He is maybe an unsung player around the NBA, but a guy that I like a lot. Does a lot of things for them out there on the floor. Gives you that kind of toughness in the paint. Not that he's massive or anything like that, but he comes up with a big block every now and then. They
Yeah.
certainly need
Really
that.
good weak side help defender. Yeah.
Yes, he comes in out of nowhere, and he's got the ability to knock in the three as well, which fits perfectly with Luka and with Kyrie Irving.
Yep.
So I'm curious to see how this plays out. They get him back and fully up to speed because it's going to take some time to get timing and rhythm and all that kind of stuff back. But you get him fully up to speed. This could be big for the Mavs come playoff time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is big. He also learned how to play with Chris Wood too, so that's going to be big for the Mavs off the bench. All right, let's go rapid fire style because we
Yeah,
both got to go be soccer dads here.
that's
So
right. We
in
do.
a few minutes. So let's do this.
All right, let's go. Dwayne Washington Jr. signs with the Knicks.
Yep, good addition on a two-way contract coming in for the rest of the year. He's only got 12 NBA games left that he can play with the Knicks, but that's fine. The Knicks, this is more of a hey, let's get a look at this guy. My guess is probably come back in training camp with them next year if all goes well. Can score the ball, can't do a whole lot else, and not a great shooter, but fine for depth purposes for the rest of the season.
And the Knicks suddenly looking really good, winning a number of games here,
Really
and
well.
they're
Yeah.
rolling right now.
Josh Hart, perfect fit for them.
Yes, he's been great now that he can shoot the three suddenly.
Yep.
Lindy Waters the third to the Thunder.
Yep. Another
Thunder
two-way
making some
promotion. Yep, another guy, guard with decent size. Thunder, they've done some stuff with their two-way guys. Lou Dort, especially, kind of the shining example. But they're turning the bottom of that roster. So promote Waters. They'll bring in somebody else on a two-way to backfill him, and then kind of start the cycle all over again. This is how Waters got this spot. He came in late last year on a two-way, signed a 2-year two-way. My guess is look for the same out of Oklahoma City here in the next few days to replace Waters, and that's how they'll keep things moving.
And ghosts of upside past, Michael Carter Williams to
Yeah.
your hometown Orlando Magic. What's that all about?
Yeah, he was with the Magic for most of last season, got waived at the trade deadline when they needed a roster spot, but did not play last year because he was recovering from ankle surgery. But he was kind of the pre-Markelle Fultz for the Magic, where it was this guy who had kind of his career was off track and had lost a lot, and they got him in there and rehabbed him, got him playing well. They really fell in love with his defense on the perimeter. So he's back in the fold here. Magic are going to take a look at him over the last few weeks of the season. They're still hanging around the edges of the play-in race. Probably not going to make it, but playing some fun basketball. So one more veteran guard in the mix, and to me, this is one where it's let's see what he's got, and then we can touch base again in the summer when we flesh out the rest of our roster and see what it looks like.
He's got super long arms, and that's something that the Magic tend to like.
Yes.
They do like players that have that kind of wingspan. But
Yep.
In any event, Keith, that was a great rapid fire there to close things out, because that was everything. That's all I've got left here for us.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right.
And just so everybody knows, we asked you guys about potential live shows. Really good feedback coming in on that. Keep that coming on the comments on this show as well. If you're interested, we're looking to probably do once a week. We'll do some form of live Q&A show. It'll be really your show to lob Trevor and I whatever questions you want, and we'll answer as many as we can. We'll probably go for half hour or so and go from there. Maybe a little longer. We may start with news if there's news items, and then we'll flow into the Q&A. But yeah, we're really excited to do that. Thanks for everybody who replied with really kind thoughts and fun ideas and those kind of things. So yeah, we're more to come on that. We'll get that sorted here and figured out over the next coming days.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Stay safe and see you.